You need to speak up. I can't hear you, Darshan. Yeah, yeah, fine. So I can see the So that I can see the title slide. Okay. And when I start speaking live, you need to just tell me whether I'm audible or not. You can tell me into the phone, maybe, and since we are connected. Yeah, so I won't talk. You just tell me. No, I won't. I'm going to put my phone on mute anyway, and I won't be speaking to you. I'll put my phone on. I'll be putting my phone on mute, and I won't be speaking to you. Okay, no problem. So you tell me when I should disconnect this call. So I'll disconnect this call and just keep the WhatsApp chat open. And on WhatsApp, you can send me a message when I start speaking and I start giving my introduction. Just send me a message saying whether I'm properly audible. I can't hear you. Okay. So I'll keep a watch on my phone also. I mean, in case you're texting me anything in terms of any saying, voice is not there, this, that. You just so that I'll keep track of. It'll be a live feedback from the side of the viewers. Hello, is the session still on? Because I just received a session request and I accepted 30 seconds ago. Hello, should I start with my introduction? Okay, so I will. Okay, fine. Good evening, everybody, and thanks very much indeed for joining in this webinar, in which I will talk about the power and benefits of executive coaching. My name is Shyam Vembar, and I thought I'll just spend a couple of minutes talking about myself and giving a little bit of my background before we dive into what is coaching and what's it all about and how does it work and so on. So I am basically an executive coach and a strategy and management consultant. My educational background is that I have an MBA from IIM Calcutta and a B.Tech from NIT Trichy. Previously, it used to be known as REC Trichy. I'm also an alumnus of the Cornell Agri-Business Management Program, an alumnus of the Harvard Business School Mahindra Universe program, and also an alumnus of IMD, which is based in Lausanne, Switzerland, IMD Yale Business School Mahindra Future Leaders program. So, been fortunate enough to have an exposure to globally renowned institutes of management in across various continents. I've had a fairly diverse, an interesting business career before I started my journey as an executive coach and a management consultant. I've had diverse commercial operations and strategic management roles across industries, geographies, and countries. I've lived and worked in India, in Southeast Asia, and the US in senior leadership roles. And I've also worked extensively in East Africa. Though I didn't live there, I sort of started up businesses in East Africa. I've had roles in business, in commercial operations, strategy and marketing. I've worked in mergers and acquisitions, cutting across consumer goods, which is FMCG and the agri sectors. Just to give you a couple of examples of some of the roles that I held, I was the country head, Indonesia, in Monsanto, and also the head of international marketing or the international marketing lead for Monsanto, based out of St. Louis in the USA. I was the South Asia head for the Monsanto vegetable seed business, and my last corporate assignment was as the executive vice president for Mahindra Agri, based out of Mumbai. I also worked for many years in the FMCG business in Unilever, and I held leadership roles in India in the personal products business, both in sales and in marketing. One of the things that I loved throughout my career was developing organizational capabilities and working with my colleagues to maximize their potential and contributions. I enjoyed this. I was passionate about it. And over a period of time, after 30 plus years in the corporate world, my vision and my desire to follow this passion in a more focused way led me to call time on my corporate career and take up executive coaching as a practitioner. So that's what I do now, and I look forward to inspiring, to merging my diverse experience, my diverse skill sets, and my passion into an effective and outcome oriented coaching practice that adds value to my clients. So that's basically about me, my background, and why I do what I do. And with that brief background, let me go straight into talking about coaching. What you can see on the first slide here is the power and benefits of executive coaching. So the obvious question when you hear about coaching, or when you hear about anything for that matter, is what is coaching, right? Now, to better answer this obvious question, strangely enough, one must first answer the not so obvious question, right? And the not so obvious question is, what is not coaching, right? And the reason I'm couching this entire introduction to coaching in this manner is that coaching is very often misunderstood, or not understood at all. And while it's okay to not have any understanding, having the wrong kind of understanding is perhaps even more dangerous. So let me first, so probably a good way of defining what is coaching is to first clear out all the confusion of what is not coaching, and what is left after eliminating all what is not coaching is essentially what coaching is all about. So what is not coaching? Coaching is not mentoring, right? And you'll hear these terms mentioned together very often. In an organization, the HR person might come and say, we need to mentor and coach this guy. Sure, you probably need to mentor and coach a person, but coaching and mentoring are not quite the same thing. They're very different, right? So coaching is not mentoring. It is not consulting, right? The McKinseys of this world, the BCGs of this world, they don't do coaching. They are consulting firms, and consulting and coaching are very different from each other. Coaching is not counseling. It might be easy to confuse counseling with coaching, and it is not the same. Coaching is not advising. Coaching is certainly not teaching. And about this teaching piece, I'll come back towards the end of my presentation and talk about a nice little proverb which kind of talks about teaching. And coaching is not training. The whole idea of engaging with a coach is not to train the client or the coachee into doing something. So coaching is not mentoring, it's not consulting, it's not counseling, it's not advising, it's not teaching, it's not training. So there's a long list of things that coaching is not about. So to give a bit of a structure to what I am saying, let's look at this 2x2 matrix, right? On the x-axis, you have on the left-hand side a problem, right-hand side going towards a solution, which are two kind of diametrically opposite things. And on the y-axis, on the top, you have asking, and in the bottom, you have telling. So you have 4 quadrants between ask, tell, problem, and solution. If you look at the top left-hand corner, which is the top left-hand quadrant, it's titled therapy or counseling, right? And counseling is one of the words that comes through in the previous slide, which talks about, which is there. Coaching is not counseling. So when you have a problem, you go to a counselor and you ask him for a few questions about your problem. The process that the counselor or the therapist engages in to solve your problem, it falls into that quadrant, right? You ask somebody about a problem, and the counselor sort of delves into your background and figures out what the issue is, and he counsels you. There's a therapy, there's behavioral therapy, there's psychological counseling. It falls into that quadrant. Below that is the consulting quadrant. So what typically happens is you have a problem in business. How do I grow my business in the next 3 years in such and such manner? So you go to a consultant, you go to BCG, you go to Ideas Consulting, you go to McKinsey, you go to whoever. So the consultant will work to understand the problem, and he will tell you a solution. In counseling and in therapy, the therapist and the counselor asks you a lot about the problem and delves into it. In consulting, primarily the output will be a ready-made solution that the consultant works out by defining the problem and understanding it, and there is a solution offered to you. So it is telling you what the solution is. Now, if you go to the right, you have an advising or a teaching or a training quadrant, where it is more of downloading knowledge to a person. So it's like the most obvious example is teaching, right? So you go to college and there's a professor who's got more knowledge than you have, and he teaches you how to do certain things, which is very different from consulting. Consulting doesn't necessarily teach you how to do certain things. The consultant offers you a solution which is ready-made. So once as a client, you go to a consultant and give the problem, basically you sit back and the consultant comes back to you after 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, whatever the time frame is, and says, this is the ready-made solution. Now in the advising, teaching, training quadrant, it's not a ready-made solution. It's more about transferring knowledge and advising and teaching what the solution is likely to be, right? So you might go to a strategic advisor. Some of the work that I do is in that area. You can go to training. I'm sure many of you have been through training programs where there's a downloading of knowledge, and that helps you to become more effective in finding solutions. Now, if you go right up to the top right-hand quadrant, that is where coaching comes into play. Coaching is about asking and providing a solution. So if I, as an individual, goes to a coach, the coach is going to spend 90% of his or her time asking me questions about myself, my motivations, what do I want to do, what my role is, what the objective of my coaching is, what my goal is. And together, working with the client, the coach arrives at a solution or a way forward in reaching a desired destination, right? So coaching is all about, it's not about telling, absolutely no telling in coaching. Coaching is all about asking questions and working together to find a solution. So you can slice and dice the difference between coaching, counseling, consulting, teaching, training, mentoring in various ways, but broadly speaking, this is how one can differentiate it. Now, mentoring is an interesting animal, because mentoring, as you can see, is an oval right in the middle here. And the reason why the oval has been positioned in the manner that it has been is that mentoring has got elements of coaching in it. Mentoring has got elements of advising and teaching as well. Very little overlap with counseling and therapy. Counseling and therapy are very specific, interventions for which people are trained in a very different kind of ways. There's very little of that in mentoring. And mentoring has very little in common with consulting as well, because consulting is all about taking a problem and then the consultant applies his or her expertise in that area and provides a solution. There's nothing that the client will be able to learn during this process apart from just taking the solution offered by the consultant and implementing it. So mentoring is in a way transferring of wisdom. So mentoring is like saying, I have been in this position before, and therefore based on my experience and the wisdom that I have accumulated after working for so many years, you can, this is how I advise you, and this is how I can hold your hand as you sort of negotiate whatever problem it is that you're facing today, right? So that is mentoring. It's got elements of coaching, elements of advising, consulting, etc. But it's different from coaching, and you'll learn more about this as I go deeper into my presentation, in terms of it is not so self-activating. Mentoring is not so self-activating as coaching is, and it's probably in some sense not as powerful as coaching is, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward in the next few slides. So as I said, coaching is not counseling, it's not consulting, it's not advising, teaching, training, it's certainly not mentoring. Therefore, now, after having answered what coaching is not, I think we can take a stab at answering what coaching is. So back to the obvious question, what is coaching? There are two definitions I've put up here. One is coaching is facilitating insights and actions to realize potential, right? This definition is used by an organization called the Coaching Lighthouse. And the other definition of coaching is it's partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. This is a definition used by the International Coach Federation. You will notice that I have highlighted certain words and phrases, and on the next slide we will go through each of these words and phrases, because these words and phrases have been put into these definitions after a lot of thought, and each one of them has got an explanation, each one of them is a kind of a telescope or a binocular that helps you to get a very close look at what drives the entire coaching process and coaching philosophy. So a few words about these words. The highlighted words in the previous definition slide were facilitating, partnering, insights, actions, thought-provoking, creative, etc. So what does facilitating mean? Facilitating means the coach is not there to provide ready-made answers to the coachee or the client. And throughout my talk, I'll use the words coachee and client intermittently. They mean the same in this context. coach is merely there to facilitate the process of self-discovery of the coachee. And the coach does this facilitating through a structured, so all of us have done, many of them, I certainly have done a lot of coaching as part of my career. When you reach a senior position, you have people who report to you. You become a sought after coach within your organization, so you coach people over a period of a few months. But that you do more from a instinctive perspective. But a coach is actually a trained facilitator who uses certain tools and techniques to facilitate within the coachee an understanding of strengths and weaknesses and how to move forward. So helps the coachee to find the right way forward. So that's where facilitating comes in. Partnering and facilitating are kind of similar sounding themes in this set of words, in these definitions, because the coach is only a partner and an equal partner with the coachee in terms of finding the way forward in realizing the coachee's potential, right? So a consultant, for instance, is not necessarily a partner. A consultant is an expert who comes to take your problem, look at it, and give you a solution. There's not much of partnership there. Mentoring is much less of a partnership, because a mentor comes in at a very senior level. He's a senior person, a person whom you look up to. For instance, one of the most recent grandmasters in chess in India, I forget his name, has taken Vishwanathan Anand as a mentor. Right? So Vishwanathan Anand is an experienced guy, 5 times world champion, one of the best chess players in the history of the game. So he has been there, he has done that, he has a lot of wisdom. So he will guide the person as a mentor. So he's not a partner in that sense, right? But a coach is a partner. The third word is insights. Coaching facilitates insights, right? An insight is very powerful, and if there is one thing or one word that I would request all of you to take home from today's webinar, is the word insight. Insights are the most powerful thing. And insights are also very difficult to get hold of because they're not very obvious. If they were obvious, they would not be called insights. So a good coaching process helps the coachee gain an insight into his or her motivations, capabilities, objectives, and so on, right? Actions. Now, contrary to what many people may believe, coaching is a very action-oriented process. And the responsibility is on the coachee to take actions leading from the coaching session. If the coachee does not take actions leading from the coaching session, the coaching engagement will not work, right? So it is action-oriented. Thought-provoking. The role of the coach is to ask powerful questions. And the coachee does the hard work of thinking, and not thinking about external things, but thinking about himself or herself. How have I been doing? Why did I do this? Why did this work for me? Why did it not work for me? What is the thing that motivates me most? So these kind of thought-provoking conversations will happen through the process of coaching, right? And that process is what creates the insights that leads to powerful outcomes and actions. Coaching is a creative process, and it is creativity that is led by the coach. So a good coach will also be very creative in trying to find ways and means to explore, areas to explore. There can be a lot of creativity in how a question is framed. There's a lot of creativity in how a question is projected when the question is asked. And on the part of the coachee, there can be a lot of creativity in interpreting his or her motivations. It's a free-flowing process, freewheeling process. There are no right and wrong answers. One can be as inspirational and as creative as one wants. So there's a lot of creativity that is there in the coaching process, because you are together, the coach and the coachee are creating a template for the future. And with creativity comes inspiration. The whole coaching process and each coaching engagement should lead to an inspired client saying, you know what, I didn't know I was capable of doing all this. I have discovered now what really motivates me. My God, I am so charged up. I am ready to go. I've discovered so much about myself. There is so much of strength that lies within me. And, some of it I knew, some of it was so hidden I didn't know. But now I'm equipped with this knowledge and I'm equipped with this capability to move forward. I find that very inspiring. And final thing is potential, because the whole thing is oriented towards discovering and activating the client's potential. If the client's potential is not going to be activated, there is no point in doing coaching, because the whole process leads ultimately to nowhere. So, facilitating, partnering, insights, actions, thought provoking, creative, inspires or inspirational, and unlocking potential. These words, which are so carefully selected in the definition of coaching, these words can make a world of difference. They're very important. And remember, the most important thing that coaching is can do for a client is give insights into himself or herself as an individual. What are the motivations? What are the strengths and weaknesses? How do you see the world? What can you do? What can you not do? They have to coaching unlocks insights which might otherwise never have seen the light of day. Now, coaching means, so coaching is not passive. On a passive to active scale, if you say on the left hand side of the x-axis, if you say passive, and on the right hand side of the x-axis, if you say active, consulting from a client's perspective is a fairly passive activity. You know what your problem is, you define your problem, hand it over to the consultant, and you wait. Once in a while, the consultant will come back and ask you a few questions for clarity, but the consultant does all the work. After the consulting period is over, consultant will come back and say, boss, here is your solution, right? That is on the active to passive scale. It is on the passive side. Mentoring will be somewhere in the middle, because mentor will constantly come and tell you, okay, what have you done, this is what we discussed last time. And then the mentor will give you a lot of advice. Vishwanathan Anand will tell his young protege, look, in 2002 I was playing this match against Vladimir Kramnik, he played this move, I played this move. So there's a lot of listening that the mentee has to do. So therefore, there also, on the active to passive scale, it is neither too active nor too passive, but more towards the passive side. But coaching is entirely on the active side, because coach's role is to hold a mirror into yourself and help you see what is within you as a client or as a coachee, right? So coach asks the powerful questions, but the thinking, the introspection, the answering of questions, the framing of creative solutions, the coach is a guide, but the coachee does the work. So there is active participation from the coachee, and a lot of hard work is required of the coachee. So coaching is not an easy engagement. It is not easy for the coach. It is certainly not easy for the client either. The client has to engage and be emotionally invested in this process. It is hard work, because delving into yourself and asking very difficult questions, answering very difficult questions sometimes can be hard work. It can be hard work emotionally. So it's very important to be actively participating and working hard. Coaching is about the client collaborating with himself in partnership with the coach. If I don't collaborate with myself as a client, if I don't open up myself, I probably will not get much out of the coaching relationship. Please remember that the client is the content expert and the coach is the process expert, right? I go to a coach as a client. I know myself. Or at least I should know myself. And the reason I'm going to a coach is I'm struggling to figure out whether what I have within me, is it good enough or not. So coaching is about bringing up what lies within the client.